Social Security Fairness Act is the #1 priority of the National Fraternal Order of Police. Because of our current Social Security laws, millions of retired police officers, firefighters, teachers, and other government employees face as much as a 60% cut in their Social Security benefits. The Fraternal Order of Police has been fighting for decades to repeal the windfall elimination and government pension offset, the two provisions that unfairly target so many Americans who have dedicated their careers to public service. Today we're joined by Congressman Garrett Graves from Louisiana, who has served in Congress since 2015. As a member of Congress, he has been an outspoken advocate for windfall elimination, government pension offset repeal, and a leader on this issue.
I'm Patrick Yoes, National President of Fraternal Order Police, and this is the Blue View.
All right, Congressman Graves, thanks for joining us here on the Blue View. Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Born and raised in South Louisiana, did a lot of work on things like restoring the coast and rebuilding levees after Hurricane Katrina. Done a lot of work on energy policy and infrastructure defense and things along those lines. This was the first time that I ever ran for office. Was coming into to this job, and it's just been an amazing opportunity to serve South Louisiana. I'm on the Transportation Committee, the Natural Resources Committee, and the Climate Committee in Congress. But just really been awesome opportunity and just incredible time to be able to represent a great part of the country in the United States Congress.
Well, Garrett, I have to tell you, I live in your district and could not be prouder and happier with the work that you do and the support you give it. And not only that, but on a personal note, the personal relationship you and I have working together on issues that are important to my members. So thank you for your leadership. I have a big issue for us in Fraternal Order Police. It's something that has been a priority for us for over 20 years now, is the inequities of windfall elimination, government pension offset, something that you and I have worked closely on, and I appreciate that. But before we start getting into that path, talk a little bit about why this is such an important issue for you, and just your thoughts on windfall elimination, government pension offset.
Yeah, sure. So Pat, first, thank you for the great candid relationship that we have. I've always enjoyed being able to call you and get just a really good, no bull answer on law enforcement issues. And so I really appreciate the close relationship and the mentoring that you've done to me in regard to law enforcement police issues. Secondly, in regard to windfall elimination, government pension offset, the reason that this became a big issue for us and really personal for me is that I worked side by side with these people, whether they were state employees, they were parish or county officials, and seeing the blood, sweat, and tears that these people put into their jobs, knowing that they were underpaid, knowing that our law enforcement every day was out there putting their lives on the line, the sacrifice that their dependents, that their spouses and others make whenever they're not compensated for it. And then to see these folks actually penalized for choosing public service. It's so frustrating. And it's one of those issues that 99% of the public is not aware of, doesn't understand. And so, the reason we've grabbed this is because I want to educate other members of Congress. I want them to understand that their frustration with defund the police, there's something that's even, potentially more impactful that's been going on for over 40 years now, that's disincentivizing or defunding individual police families. And so that's why we've grabbed onto this. Pat, I want to say very quickly, I have worked side by side with these folks, but I also want to be clear that this would not affect me personally, and that I've secured the quarters necessary to be exempt from this. But it is something that's very personal to me in terms of a lot of people that I've worked with.
All of our laws, our society is built on a similar premise, and that premise is that it's fairness. We understand what fairness is. When someone pays for something, there should be an expectation that they receive that. Just so for those that are not familiar with windfall elimination, government pension offset, in the simplest terms, if you were a public employee and you paid into a public pension system, and paid your contributions and paid into it, and then eventually went on and also paid your Social Security quarters, and eligible to get Social Security, you could lose as much as 60% of what you would have been entitled to if you had not been a public employee. If you're in a private sector and paid into a 401k or something else, that doesn't apply to you. But because you're a public employee, there's definitely a lack of fairness in here. So just to frame it, of what the problem is. So if we could, let's just dive into where we are now. The House passed a rule recently that says that if you get 290 co-sponsors and maintain it for a period of time, it would move directly to the floor for a vote up or down. We were able to do that. We were able to do that a couple of months ago. We got to that number. We celebrated the fact that the first time ever that 290 members of Congress recognized that this is a matter of equity and wanted to fix it. Actually, the number's at 305 now. Within a week of doing that, Congress convened and came up with a rule that basically ran the clock out on it and changed the dates at which it could be heard. They ended up coming back the next day and fixing it, but the fix was in already at that time.
We caught them during that vote when they were trying to pass that change in the rule. If anybody's bored enough to go look at C-SPAN, you will see this big kerfluffle on the House floor and all these people. And Rodney Davis and I were right up in the middle of it, but we did get them to reverse it. But it was clear. You made the exact right point, Pat, that it was clear that there was a fix-in, that there was sort of institutional opposition to this, despite the fact, and gosh, we can't gloss over this, as a result of the work of the Fraternal Order of Police and so many other people, we're at the point now to where 305 co-sponsors out of 435 members of Congress, bills don't get that kind of support. So really amazing that you have such extraordinary support, bipartisan support in Congress, and you still have this leadership or this institutional opposition or effort to try and kill this thing.
Well, so let's take it to where it is now. You set a set of rules. We followed by those rules. We played this game by those rules. We got to the 290. And so now we should have had a vote 3 weeks ago on a Thursday. On a Tuesday, it was set for a hearing by the committee. In essence, took it off of the calendar, brought it to the committee, and if you listen to the testimony that was given, there was a lot of self-serving comments that were made on the record to make it sound like everybody was in support of fixing this. But in reality, they weren't bashful in identifying that what they did is they took this vote in order to take it off the calendar so that there would not be a vote. Very frustrating. It's very frustrating in the fact that in 20 years we haven't been able to get a hearing. So this hearing could have happened 2 years ago. It could have happened 2 months ago. Instead, it happened 3 weeks ago or so in order to kill this bill from moving forward. Talk a little bit about what that legislative process is and the frustrations of trying to move a piece of legislation that clearly has the recognition that something's wrong with it. 305 co-sponsors on it tell you, and bipartisan, show you that there's a serious problem here. But in reality, we're not getting it done because of what?
So, Pat, you're exactly right that this has sort of been a cat and mouse game. We get the 290 co-sponsors. They come in and try and stop the clock on us. We get to within days of this bill being called for a vote on the House floor. They then circumvent the process and go bring it up in a committee where they killed the bill. I want to stop there for just a minute, because during the committee discussion on the bill, as they're sitting there saying, "Oh, we can't do this," what they were saying is that it was going to cause bankruptcy of the Social Security system, and that it was going to take revenues from people effectively that didn't deserve it, and give funds, back to the people that have been victimized by windfall elimination, government pension offset. What they failed to mention was that this is your money. You have paid into the system, and you just explained how this disadvantages or adversely affects people. But look, I'll give you another example of that, Pat. Let's say that you and I both decided that we were going to be security guards. We were going to be private security guards. In 20 years of our life, you and I worked side by side. We made the exact same amount of money. We paid the exact same into Social Security. And then I decided at that point, you know what? I'm going to stop working. You went on to be 10 years as a sheriff's deputy. 10 more years as a sheriff's deputy. So keep in mind, you and I paid exact same amount of money into Social Security for the exact same time, exact same salary. Whenever we go to retire, I'm going to make up numbers here just for give an example. Let's say that my Social Security benefits are $1,200 a month. Yours may be $800, maybe $700. Even though we worked the same period of time, we paid the same amount of money. That is defunding police. That is discriminating against law enforcement and teachers and firefighters and other people that are underpaid, that are overworked, and sacrifice much. And so it's wrong. So where we are now, as we continue to play this cat and mouse game, he said, okay, you're going to do that. We're going to file a discharge petition. We're going to use another provision in the rules that forces this bill for a vote. Under a discharge petition, if you get 218 people to sign the discharge petition, I'll repeat for the third time, we have 305 co-sponsors. If we get 218 people to sign our discharge petition, this bill is forced for a vote before the House of Representatives. So that's one path we're doing, and we're not going to stop. We're not going to back down. We're going to keep trying to run up those signatures. But there is a parallel path that's going on. After the committee voted the bill down, Congressman Rodney Davis, Congresswoman Julia Ledlow, myself, and others, we got together, had a press conference. We called out the people who killed that bill in committee, and we reminded them, it is your money. It is not their money. It is your money. And as a result, they came out in the press and said, both the chair and the ranking member of the tax writing committee came out and said that they are committed to coming up with a solution by the end of the year. So we are, while we're working that discharge petition process and trying to force this to a vote, we're also trying to hold them accountable to their own commitment to get something done by the end of the year. And of course, we have a few must-pass bills that this fix could be attached to and ultimately give you and so many others the relief that they deserve.
Well, Garrett, there's a lot to unpack there, which you just laid out. First, let me just point out one thing that I've always said when I had conversations with member of Congress is I'm not asking for anything. I'm not asking for a handout. I'm not asking for anything that I should not be entitled to like every other American. It's just a matter of fairness. I'm just asking for something that I paid for, just like everyone else. So I think, the whole argument that is where does the money come from? Well, I'm going to tell you where it comes from. It comes from the backs of the public employees who paid into the system, who are not allowed to collect what they should be entitled to, just like every other American. So let's talk a little bit about the path that you're talking about with the discharge petition. There's still a lot of obstacles that happen there that we need to work through. I'd like to talk one about that path that you just identified and what's the likelihood of having enough time to get it over to Senate in order to be able to have something to happen there. And then the other one is there's a lot of discussion about alternative plans. Alternative formulas to use that may be thrown into this mix as well. And I'll just make the comment about that second, about the alternative plans. They all recognize there's a problem here, but they don't fix the problem. They fix it for some Americans, but they don't fix it for others. So I guess the point I'll have to make there is that if it really isn't fair and you recognize you need to fix it, why aren't you fixing it? Why are you putting a Band-Aid on it and fixing it for some Americans and not others? I know I threw a two-part question to you, but if I could get you to kind of carry that just a little further on both of those.
Sure. So look, one of them, it is a fairness issue in that you're not asking for anything different than any other citizen of the United States that worked and paid into Social Security. So it's an important point because, when I talked at the beginning, Pat, about educating other members of Congress, so many people don't realize this or perhaps misunderstand it and think that people are trying to get double retirement and things along those lines. That's not the case. It's simply treating public employees the same way that every other retiree is treated in regard to their payment into the Social Security Trust Fund. Number two, in regard to whether there's a new alternative formula and it fixes for some people and others and not others, there has been discussion about fixing the component that would address the cut in retirement for the retiree, the public employee, the retired public employee only, and perhaps not fixing the spouse issue. I want to be clear that we're committed to fixing everything, that our bill HR 82 fixes everything it does, a full repeal. But I'll also tell you that I'm not going to go out there and negotiate against myself. Our bill repeals everything. If folks want to sit down and begin having a conversation about alternatives or how to perhaps step up to full repeal, let's have that discussion. Let's repeal 10%, then go to 30%, then go to 50%. Like, I'm fine to having those discussions, but some people are coming to us and say, well, hey, give us an alternative. No, I'm not going to negotiate with myself. I want full repeal, and I want a path to get there. If this year we can get a first down, I'm going to take it, but I'm coming back next year, and I'm going to work to continue marching down the field to ultimately get into the end zone, which of course is full repeal of both WEP and GPO.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's just say hypothetically we are able before the end of the session to get this get some movement on the repeal. Then it goes over to Senate. What's your appreciation of Senate involvement? Because although we have a lot of support in the House, that has not materialized on the Senate side.
Well, I think the focus or most of the progress has been in the U.S. House of Representatives. I don't think that you've seen quite as much attention to this issue in the United States Senate as you've seen in the House. So does that potentially create a quandary? So yeah, it kind of does, Pat. In that one, we talked about that discharge petition path, which could force it for a vote before the House. But then, of course, the Senate may decide, well, we're not going to take it up. We don't have time or whatever, in which case it dies. Let me stay there for just a minute. Would that be everything's lost? No, not necessarily, because as you know, that means next Congress, we kind of start with, we've already passed the House, and we already had a majority of members of the House on the record voting for this bill. And so I think that we could get back to House passage much faster than we've obviously ever gotten to that point. Is that ideal? No, it's not ideal. And that's why the alternative path of getting the House Tax Writing Committee leaders to come up with a solution, if they come up with something, I think it would be attached to one of the must-pass bills, perhaps the appropriations bill or something else that must pass by the end of the year. And I think at that point, it would be, sort of pre-negotiated into a bill that would be clearly intended to pass both the House and the Senate. So, both of these have their advantages and disadvantages. The discharge petition means that we may get it through the House, but it may not be considered in the Senate, so we die. The alternative path of getting a negotiated settlement, it would likely be something that would be negotiated among Republicans, Democrats, House and Senate. So it means it would get to the president's desk. But as you've sort of indicated, it may be an alternative solution, which would be something that is short of full repeal that we all support and are advocating for, and our bill actually does.
Yeah, well, very, very frustrating. I guess it's a lot like football. It's a game of inches when you're dealing with politics. It's been a 20-year journey to get to this point, and I'm optimistic that if at the very least we're forcing people to talk about this issue, maybe we can start getting some movement moving forward with this. I appreciate your leadership on this. There is another side to this, and that is how spouses are affected by it. And so just if you think and you don't have compassion for public employees who have paid into the system and not getting what they have, let's talk about how it affects their spouse. Can you kind of frame that up a little bit of how it impacts family members as well?
I will, yeah. So look, I mean, you have a lot of spouses that chose to stay home to help with the kids, and look, their contribution to the family is extraordinary in those cases, and that their effort to make sure that the kids grew up in a loving, supportive environment, that they had food and other things available, and that was a decision was made. It's a contribution to the family, and so those folks decided to stay with the family, to work within the house, and now when their spouse retires and perhaps passes on, those people, that spouse who chose to sacrifice for the family is going to be penalized. So I mean, this really is a double penalty. It affects the retiree, it affects the spouse or widow, and it's so inappropriate. And you used the term, you reminded us of the term that's in the bill's title, which is the Social Security Fairness Act. This is unfair. This is unjust, in that you're not just penalizing the retiree, you're penalizing the spouse or widow. And it really is just disgusting what this does, because that person often has no alternative. And we've actually had people write our office explaining their economic situation to us because of the discount that they're getting under Social Security, and literally unable to make ends meet. And that's wrong for people that have sacrificed so much for our community, and that, they decided to be peacekeepers, they decided to be law enforcement officers, and now their dependents are suffering for it.
Hey, Garrett, I want to take this time to let our listeners know, and my members know, that for quite some time, this is not a new issue for you. Prior to the pandemic, you actually hosted, yourself and Rodney Davis hosted a number of groups. We met monthly on a strategy of how to get where we are now to force this to a vote. So this is something very passionate to you. I appreciate your leadership on it, and your recognition of something that is so unfair to public employees. Let's talk, if we could. There's a lot going on in Congress right now as we wrap it up. Midterm elections, are going to be, going to kind of in some ways shape the actions that are going to happen for the remainder of this session. What do you see on the horizon for law enforcement during this very, I guess, strange time we find ourselves in Washington every 2 years when we have in between elections and a new Congress?
Sure. So this is known as a lame duck session, and that it's the last few months before the end of the year. And so the leaders that are in place are going to try and rush to shove everything through that they can before you have a change in leadership in the new year. And so, there are two big bills that we have to get done, Pat. One of them is the appropriations bill. Right now, appropriations or funding for the government runs out in December. So there's going to have to be an effort to come in and re-up those, whether it's another temporary extension or a longer term, yet to be seen. My guess is that it's going to be something more temporary, but again, yet to be seen. Secondly, the National Defense Authorization Act that obviously funds our military and determines which weapon systems and pay and benefits and things like that go to our military. So those are the two big bills. There's a chance that a few other cats and dogs having to do with water resources or Coast Guard or others could get passed individually or attached to these. But what it means to law enforcement is that these bills in funding government, this funds the Department of Justice and all of the OJP programs out there, the Office of Justice programs out there that benefit our local law enforcement agencies, programs that fund everything from vest and technology to actually hiring more officers. And so, look, I've mentioned this a few times, and I know it's politically a very sensitive or divisive issue for some people, not me, but this whole defund the police thing, we have seen how that plays out in regard to undermining the security or safety of our communities. And so now there are folks that are trying to come in and undo and put words back in their mouth and things like that. And so, what's most important is that we truly focus on law and order. We focus on supporting financially our peacekeepers, our law enforcement officers, but also something that cannot be discounted is that we support verbally, we support morally, we lift up these people. And I can't overstate this after working side by side with these people for years. The sacrifice that they make, and that every day they go out and potentially put their lives on the line. These people are underpaid and underappreciated. And so, something else that's really important is that we stop this ridiculousness of attacking the police and not just get out there and fund them and provide them the resources they deserve, but truly lift these people up and promote them as the heroes that they are, that truly are the line between chaos and civil order or safety in our community. Folks deserve that. Our community deserves it. And I'll say it one more time. We see what happens when you go through this crazy experiment of attacking those law enforcement officers or those people that are out there trying to keep peace in our community. It doesn't work.
Garrett, there's some 800,000 men and women across this country go into communities every single day and make a difference in the lives of the people they serve. And this has been a very difficult 2 years for our profession. And I will argue that it has done irreparable harm that will take a generation to fix. We find ourselves at a time now where policies and directives were when it comes to law enforcement were being made in a large part by people who had no law enforcement experience whatsoever. I'm happy to say that a lot of cities have reversed course, recognize that they have that there were missing elements, and taken steps to fix that. To me, what's more important is how do we move forward rather than how we got here. History will record that. Less interested in that. I'm trying to make our jobs in our communities more safe, and this has been without a doubt, unquestionable, the worst time for the safety of law enforcement officers, with the amount of law enforcement officers that are being shot across this country since we started recording this data. This is last year was our highest year, and we're far on pace to eclipse that. But we have another major issue that's coming, and that is that we've seen law enforcement retirements up 45%. Resignations are up, I want to say 30 some odd percent. And we're just not attracting the best and the brightest because of the demonization that's happened to this profession. We have a major challenge on our hands right now, both for the wellness of the officers that are still on the job every single day making a difference, and more importantly, the next wave of law enforcement officers that are going to shape law enforcement for the future. And it's something that we desperately need, and maybe a topic you and I will get together on and do again. So with that, we'll go ahead and start wrapping this up. If you could, I'll give you an opportunity to have some closing words.
Yeah, sure. One, I want to thank you and all your members. You know, we've kind of brushed over the fact that we secured 305 co-sponsors on that bill. There is not legislation that gets 305 co-sponsors. Everybody sees, if you wake up, if you read the newspaper, if you watch the news, you see the divisiveness in Congress. The fact that any bill has 305 co-sponsors on it, which means a huge bipartisan majority on a bill. That means that you have a ton of people all across the United States educating members of Congress, working in support of this bill. And so I want to thank you and all of the Fraternal Order Police members for all of your hard work, your legwork, your communication on the ground, connecting with members of Congress, because bills don't get that kind of support. And I don't want to brush over that fact. It would not have happened. It couldn't happen without your leadership and all of your members out there on the ground. Secondly, this change in the law happened 40 years ago. And sometimes people say, well, look, that's just the way it's been. It's been that long, but it's wrong. It's unjust. And as you've said, it's unfair. We're not stopping on this. The clock has not run out. We're going to continue running through the tape through the end of this year. And I'm hopeful that we're able to get at least a partial fix, in which we are going to start right back in January of next year, if that's the case. But of course, our goal is to get the bill enacted as is, full repeal of both WEP and GPO, fully restoring the retirement benefits that law enforcement officers all across the United States have paid for and deserve.
Hey, Garrett, look, if nothing else, let me make this part clear. I want my members and I want Congress to understand that we're not going away. This is an important issue, and it's one that needs to be fixed. And while we're going to push for the remainder of this session to try and get it, you need to know that it doesn't end at the end of the session. We will be right back at it. We are not stopping till we fix this injustice. And I appreciate your leadership, working with us closely, and to try and fix this problem in Congress. Again, thank you for joining us. I appreciate all you do. As a member of your district, I can certainly appreciate the leadership that you provide to Louisiana. And especially, my hometown, and it's an honor to work alongside you. So, to our viewers, thank you for joining the Blue View, where we talk about the issues that are vitally important to the men and women who suit up and show up in communities across this country every single day. Thank you.
Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. To get the latest from the National FOP, make sure to follow us on Twitter and Facebook at GLFOP and on Instagram at FOP National. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.